You were an offensive lineman. You were most notably played for Jim Harbaugh, for Andrew Luck.
The joke I always had, because my roommates were David DeCastro and Andrew Luck and Griff Whalen, and they all went to the NFL, and I stayed an extra year. I always joked, they left to be millionaires. I stayed to be a champion because they never won the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl. So I think I win in the end, right?
Joining us today here on NFL Spotlight, he's a former offensive lineman at the University of Stanford. He works closely on Prime Vision with Next Gen Stats, which is one of the Thursday Night Football weekly alternate streams. And he also played a pivotal role in putting together the XFL rulebook in 2020. It is the one and only Sam Schwartzstein. Sam, this is a long time coming. How are you, my man?
Yeah, Harvey, we date back all the way to the Combine. I think I remember meeting you, and you don't even remember meeting me back then, but it's been a long time coming. Every good friendship starts in Indianapolis at the Combine.
That is 100% true. And you reminded me of when it was. We actually were at the Pardon My Take recording, and we bumped into each other over there. And ever since, we've DM'd a couple of times. Of course, I've been following everything you're doing with Amazon, and it is really, really cool. And I really want to go through this entire journey for you because it is fascinating. I think everything you do is truly it's the future of football. I really believe in that. And I want to get into that. But before we get into everything you do and everything we're doing right now, I want to just go through the journey and how this all started for you. And like I mentioned, you were at Stanford. You were an offensive lineman. You were most notably played for Jim Harbaugh, for Andrew Luck, who you remain very close with. I just want to ask you about just college and playing and what was the experience like and being a starter and being a captain, like all of that. What was that all like for you as a player back then in college?
Yeah, I think even before that, I think I have a very funny journey. My parents are New Yorkers. I was born in Connecticut, and then my dad and mom decided to move to Texas to be closer to some family. And my family had no idea what football was. In Connecticut, we were the family that wouldn't let the high school have lights on the stadium because we backed up to it. And then Texas, that's what you do. And so my high school football team, led by the Dodge family, Todd Dodge, Riley Dodge, now the head coach, it was like Friday Night Lights. It was very different, and you had to play football. Fortunately, I was blessed with size to be able to play. And then my brother got me working out in 6th grade. He said to me, when he dropped out of school to help me get recruited when I was a sophomore, and he said, "Sammy, you can go wherever you want to go, but if you get a scholarship offer from Stanford, you have to go." And I was like, "Sure." I had no idea what Stanford was. I thought it was an Ivy League, and he was like, "Seriously, you have to go to Stanford." So he kind of made a plan for me and a mission for me to get to go to Stanford. And I felt very fortunate. Coach Harbaugh and Coach White, Coach Dahlman at the time, my offensive line coach, were able to get me an opportunity to go to the dream school that my brother had set out for me. I thought it was in Connecticut. I thought it was Stanford. And then, funny enough, I ended up back there when I was doing the XFL. So it was awesome. It was a rough go for a couple of years, but I had some great friends. Andrew Luck in my class, David DeCastro, Griff Whalen, Chase Thomas, a lot of great guys that I was around for a long time. And then be able to go from that 5-7 first year till, the Toby Gerhart, Sun Bowl, Orange Bowl. And then I finally was a starter. It was actually a funny scenario. Harbaugh had freshman practices and then varsity practice, but they didn't have a center who could make the line calls for freshman practice. So I had to do in training camp freshman practice. And so I was on the field for like 4.5 hours straight doing freshman and varsity practice, but it helped me because I was the guy who had to know everything on the field. I was like a little coach to the young freshmen, and that really kind of set me on my path until ultimately Coach Shaw took over, and Mike Bloomgren came. And Mike Bloomgren is maybe the best football coach I've been around, who was my offensive line coach, play caller, run game play caller, was recently at Rice. And, he kind of empowered me to be a part of the game planning process, which was huge for me because, I had my physical limitations that maybe some other centers did not have, but being able to work with him, be able to be kind of a leader on like game planning standpoints. And I don't ever knew if he actually cared my opinion on which play calls worked and didn't work, but he would sit down with me every Friday and go through the play calls and did this work, did this not work? What would you do here? And he would throw it out. Maybe it had already been thrown out of the game plan, but he would just throw it out to make me see that, hey, he trusts me in my opinion to be able to execute some of these plays. So for me, it was huge to get voted a captain was awesome. The young guys really loved me, and be able to be side by side with guys like Stephon Taylor, who just got into the Stanford Hall of Fame, and Chase Thomas. So It was a pretty awesome experience. Ultimately, win the Rose Bowl. And the joke I always had, because my roommates were David DeCastro and Andrew Luck and Griff Whalen, and they all went to the NFL, and I stayed an extra year. And I always joked they left to be millionaires. I stayed to be a champion because they never won the Pac-12 and the Rose Bowl. So I think I win in the end, right?
You came out on top. Let's just say that,
Yeah,
right, Sam?
yeah.
There we go. So I did want to ask you because, like, where did this passion of wanting to teach and be so passionate about that come from? Like, I heard that they called you Coach Sammy while you're there at Stanford. Like, where did this passion of loving to teach the game come from?
Yeah, I think when Coach Harbaugh would always talk about you have to find a way to contribute any way you can, and I think that was important for me because I wasn't seeing the field, I wasn't big enough, I wasn't strong enough, but I could always help with everyone on their test the night before the game, or be in the room and make sure that we're all on the same page. Because I think Shannon Turley was an important coach in my life. He was our strength coach, and he talked to control the controllables. And mental errors are not acceptable. They were not acceptable at Stanford when I was there. And having a missed assignment, you can lose physically, right? And we can try and fix that. There's some things that God can bless you with or not, but you can't lose because you were wrong or you didn't know those things. So that was important to me. Was so if guys were struggling understanding the offense, and for people who don't know, the Stanford offense is probably more complex than a lot of the NFL offenses. You'll hear guys say kill, 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 and can. Well, that was every play in the Stanford playbook. We had a regular play, a killed play, an alert play. We could also ripcord to, and we get to, if we don't know what we were going to see, we could also do each week we had a different one, parachute, Pepsi. So there could be 5 play calls in one. And so it was confusing. And so being able to provide that guidance to people, and I had 3 5-star freshmen come in, Andrews Pete, Josh Garnett, both first-round picks, Kyle Murphy. All these guys played in the NFL for quite some time. So I was a little Coach Sammy to them because I had to help them get up through the ranks to be able to contribute for that Rose Bowl season.
Now, were there any thoughts of coming out after that 2012 season? Like, did you think about that, or what was the reason you stayed back that extra year?
Well, so after the 2011 season, it's a very Stanford thing. I was working on a company with a couple friends, and so it wasn't actually NFL or that. It was like, are we going to build this tutoring company or not? And I just figured, I have unfinished business. I wanted to be a champion. Harbaugh had a quote that said, "Those who stay will be champion." He leaves. Coach Shaw is there. Coach Bloom is there. And I felt like, hey, we have a chance to do something. And my brother actually, he gave me a great quote. He said, the year after Peyton Manning left Tennessee, who was the quarterback? It was T. Martin. T. Martin won the national championship, not Peyton Manning. He was like, you have a chance to do something special here. You don't just need the quarterback. And, I think Andrew Luck's the best football player of all time. I've said that multiple times. But it was still nice to be able to get that win with the amazing defense that we had.
Yeah, so I want to go. I'll eventually come back to the whole, Andrew Luck stuff because I know you still stay close with him, and obviously his father, Oliver Luck, with the XFL. But what happens post college? Like, what did you do after that? When obviously, the NFL doesn't work out. But like, what happened after that? Where we know about the XFL, we know about Amazon, but what happened in between all that?
Yeah, I interned at a company called Chegg. A lot of people, if you've been in college, you use Chegg, whether it's for textbook rental or online services like homework help. And I had an opportunity to intern there a few times. I got to see it grow, and I stayed there post college. I worked on products there. I helped run our internships.com platform, helped on the business side. And what really I was passionate about was every year we have a hackathon. So for the non-techie people, it's you get one day or it can be 1 week of where you don't have to work on your regular job and you can create a product that will help the company. And I won it 3 of the 4 times that I did it after school. And so I was really passionate about, finding what problems we had and then how can I create a quick solution to it. And so that was where I did. And I was able to then, work on those projects as we were able to win. And part of it was with the presentation of it. I had a very good understanding of what the CEO wanted, what the COO wanted, and I was able to pitch exactly how I could solve their problems, not necessarily just solve, a random problem that might come up. So I think being able to partner with engineers and having people, and I think of the workspace, especially the tech workspace, is very similar to football, where you have people from all shapes and sizes, different backgrounds. I don't know everything that a designer would do, but I need to be able to work with them to be able to solve a problem. And just like an offensive lineman, I couldn't tell you exactly what Delano Howell, one of our safeties, did a practice. Actually, it was funny. I went 3 weeks without ever seeing Delano. He was a starting safety. I was a starting center. And we hit each other in practice sometimes. Like, what's up, Delano? How you doing, man? Like, it was football's like that. You could go a whole week without seeing one of your teammates because we have so compartmentalized, which is very similar to
Right.
football and so or to work. So I think that was where I was. And when Oliver, he took over the XFL, he wanted me to have a product development process similar to tech, but for rule changes, and that's how I got involved back at the XFL.
Got it. So let's jump into that entire XFL element because we, like I said, we had Dean Blandino on here as well, and he mentioned how involved you were and how important of a figure you were in all of that. Where you were literally creating a rule book for a new league. What was that experience like? When you got that phone call, I believe it was from Oliver. What did you think about the idea of doing it? And what was that entire process like where you are now a very, very big part of this new XFL, which is coming back in 2020.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I remember Oliver sent me a text saying, "Sammy, it's Oliver. Uh, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to call you tomorrow about a job opportunity. I can't tell you what it is." So I'm waiting. Like, what is it? I'm looking up what could be the new soccer team because he used to run the Dynamo. I'm trying to figure out what he could be doing, and I had no idea it was going to be the XFL. Which when Vince McMahon had relaunched the process of doing it, I tweeted at him like probably like every day, being like, "Hey, I'm ready to help. I'm ready to help. I'm ready to help." And so it was very cool. I felt very lucky to get the opportunity. And I think what I did is I went through and my coaches did not like this. My bosses at Chegg did not like this, but I asked why on every single rule in the rule book. So I went through all 64 pages and asked, why do we do this? Why do we do that? And then we had a process in place that was going to do build, test, repeat, which is from the lean startup method. And I was able to implement it in football, which is really fun to be able to go through that process. And I had first thing I did was go through every single line in the rule book, figure out which ones I wanted to talk to people about. And we did a football reimagination committee, meaning we had people from former players, Jason Wright, president of the Commanders right now, Doug Flutie, Jim Caldwell, John Fox, all these people in a room. We had tech leaders from SMT, from Sports Vision, come in and try and argue over why certain rules are in place. And it was my job to then take that information and then apply a data layer on top of it. And so it was really cool to just come in and be like, why do we do this? Why do we have eligibility restrictions? Why does college have heavy formations and the NFL doesn't have heavy formations? Why are all these different features? Or even as simple as one of my favorites is why do we score it the way we do? Because we have a 6-point touchdown and a 1-point extra point. But versus rugby, which is the game comes from, is a 5-point touchdown and a 2-point extra point. Well, they wanted two field goal drives to be worse than one touchdown drive. That's where a lot of the analytics come in and fourth down decision. And so there's why going for touchdowns is so much more valuable. And there's some fun things to kind of figure out. Where did it come from rugby? Why did we do the forward pass? All these different convoluted rules that I started researching and reading as many books as I can to kind of figure that out of like where does each rule start and stop. And I think that was a really fun part of doing the XFL rulebook.
Well, that is fascinating. So, did that experience change the way you saw the game of football? And is there anything in particular that you guys found that you want to see the NFL implement in the future because of what you saw there?
Well, I'll start with the second part of that question. The NFL is the best sport in the world. Like come on. I mean, when you're in first place in a race, you don't change your strategy. And that's kind of how I think about it, right? You only change when you have to change. That's why you'll see the NBA might do some like the NBA Cup. Like they're not the biggest thing. They're second biggest thing. And so there's different things that you have to do. So from there, from my point of view, how I watched the game differently, I was really, really concerned with timing. So everyone knows a lot about my involvement creating, the XFL's kickoff,
Mhm.
but the game timing rules was very important to me. We were told we had to be under 3 hours. Probably nobody listening to this is old enough for the Heidi game, but they transitioned off of a game-winning field goal back in the 70s or 60s to the TV show Heidi, and so everyone missed it. No internet, so you can't figure out who actually won the game. And so I had to be within the 3 hour window. But I also wanted same scoring and same play count, so more action. And so I started timing ball spot, or when the ball was spotted, how long the ball was spotted. I would go to games. I'd go to Andrews Colts games and time how long they spotted. I would create that data. And then I had a team of Syracuse data analytics company from Brian Kilmeade worked with me, set up this group of all the Syracuse Sports Analytics Club. They would chart games for me and chart how long it took to spot the ball in certain timing. So for me, game timing is what I'm looking at all the time. Pace of play, how many plays will be. So for everyone watching, the average NFL game's 3:08, 3 hours and 8 minutes. And that roughly translates. So each minute of game time, so we have an hour-long game clock, is about 3 minutes of real time because of the 12-minute halftime. So if you're watching the game, you can now try and extrapolate when the game will end or not end. The last 2 minutes of each game, or each half are much longer, but there's a kind of way now you can see the game, or you can see the pace of play, and have they spotted the ball, 30-yard play. So I tried a 20-second play clock at one point that started at the end of the previous play because I wanted to go fast. Well, I found out that every throw over or play over 25 yards, I'd have a delay game. But it was because you needed the big guys to run all the way down the field to get to the line of scrimmage. And so now, if you're watching at home, this is how it works almost every time. It takes about 18 seconds to call a play with one-to-one coach-to-player communication. It takes about 6 seconds to operate the huddle and to out, and about 6 seconds at the line of scrimmage. So you can do that math. There's a play of nearly around every 31 to 30 seconds around there, and you can now watch, here's how it's going, the pace of play of the game. In the 2 minutes, it's every 23 seconds they have plays. And so again, I'm going on too much, but this is how I watch football now because I'm constantly looking at pace of play.
This is fascinating stuff. And this is all stuff that you started to notice after you got into the XFL and started doing all of that, right?
Yeah. It was, Stanford, we weren't very a fast team when we played. It was just power, throw to Zach Ertz. Let's pray that Ed Reynolds gets an interception. There was a lot of that at the end of my career. Zach Ertz, won me a lot of games. So it was, it was a lot of fun to kind of have this new view into football.
Well, I want to play devil's advocate for a second while I'm on this topic anyways. Is there a rule in the NFL right now that you just cannot stand after going through all this?
I don't think so. Look, it's the highest level, there is. And I think, I'll tell you this. A lot of people ask for get rid of the chain crew, right?
Yeah.
How come we can't measure this? I love the chain crew. Even if we could solve it, I still don't think it would be as fun or dramatic as, oh my goodness, they just put the chain down and we saw it. You don't see as many measurements in the NFL as more. It's something similar I did in the XFL is I started every new set of downs on a yard line. So if you got 11 and a half yards, just going to creep it up to 12 yards, so that you now start on a yard line. So you only really have to measure if a play is ending between the numbers and the hash. And that way we really can't see if it made it to the yard line or not. And so, look, I think the NFL is, as close as possible.
I'm going to get to Amazon and everything you do for Thursday night here in a second, but I would be remiss of me if I don't ask you about the kickoff rule, which of course came from the XFL. How did that all come about, and what do you think so far of how this has gone so far this season, which again, you were a very, very important figure in putting that into the XFL?
Yeah, I think what the biggest thing is trying to identify what was causing concussions. It was a 3 times more likely to get a concussion on that play than any other play, scrimmage play. And so I think there's a level of understanding that football will have some sort of dangers to it. And so there's a level of acceptance to it, but you shouldn't have that stand out of a play. That was the data there. And so what we found was that teams start 10 yards apart, sprint 35 yards, and create a collision. And so we looked at the play and we realized, well, what does it look like when the ball is caught? Because very rarely are we lined up in a normal kickoff formation. It's not kicked deep. The surprise onside kick. That's only 1% of 1% of kicks. So we said, okay, if we removed that, although it's exciting, it's decided Super Bowls, what would the play look like? And almost nearly every time the players were 3 to 5 yards apart at the 35 and the 30. And so we said, let's start the play from there. I think the funny part is there were a lot of opinions on whether it would be good or not good before we ever tested it out. And so Oliver had close relationship with the National JUCO College or NJCAA. And he said, we went and practiced, did a practice game there, and we just practiced these kickoffs. I practiced from kicking from the 50, from the 30, all these different spots on the field to try and figure it out. And I remember Brian Kilby looked at me before our first ever kickoff. We'd be heads down, we'd be PowerPoints. It started out as sugar packets when Oliver pitched Turner Sports to do it. We then went to a PowerPoint presentation, and then Brian looks at me, he's like, "What do you think is going to happen?" I was like, "I have no idea. I have no idea." And it looked like a kickoff. Now, there were fringe things that we had to make sure that changed so that we get the right behavior. That's why there's 2 touchbacks. That's what, if you kick it, bounce in the field of play and go through the end zone, we need you to incentivize the returner to go get it because nobody's moving. Versus a normal kickoff, because everyone's sprinting at him, you have to go get the football. So we needed that incentive. We needed an incentive to reason why don't kick touchbacks. That's why we had the 35 as the touchback spot. So we then started building all these different incentives, and then we had to go to officials. How do we tell people to line up? In our league, I drew extra spots because collegiate hashes were much better from a spacing standpoint to get everyone spread across the field. But the NFL actually solved it. They're like, we'll just use the numbers as other lines of demarcation. I was like, because I hated having to paint extra spot in the field because all these different rules with the stadiums that we were renting. I was like, okay, that's there we go. They figure that out. So I think it's really cool to see it in the NFL. It was something we tested over 18 months in the XFL, and to see something similar in the NFL and I think people love it. I think people have seen touchdown returns, they're up. I think total returns are up. I think we also wanted variance. Not every play needs to start at the 25. You could just start the play at the 25, 35, wherever, 30, wherever. But being able to have variance into where starting points are post touchdown, I think is exciting as well.
Yeah, I think it's a big testament also just to all of you who worked on this, because I've been to many owners' meetings. For a rule to get passed in the NFL, it literally takes forever. It just does not happen. And for this to happen the way it did in one off season just tells you they loved everything about what the XFL did. And of course, now it's here in the NFL. We'll see what happens here in the off season if there are any other tweaks, but it does feel like this is something that is here to stay in the NFL. All right, let me move over to Amazon, because this is where the good stuff really is fascinating to me and where I think the future of football becomes really, really interesting. Let me just start with, how did this opportunity with Amazon come along for you, and just to have a chance to have this alternate broadcast, which obviously you play a big role in?
Yeah, part of the XFL shutting down due to COVID, I had a lot of opportunities to talk to different networks, different leagues. I don't know how many 3rd division Danish soccer teams reached out to me and go, "Hey, Moneyball, Danish soccer," and so it was different opportunities I had. And I was consulting for a while, and then Amazon reached out because they just wanted. Amazon had just bought their rights for 11 years. They're going to start a year early. I think they were just talking to as many people as they could, and they wanted to figure out, hey, what could be different? What could be unique about the way we broadcast games? Because even our show, we had the play calls over the air on XFL. We had sideline reporters with players. We had the spread on the game, on the score bug, persistent throughout the game. If the game was out of hand, we would change to a halftime update of what the score was. So it would be -3 to -17 to try and get people to retain. So we had done some fun stuff to try and innovate in the TV space. And I started talking to them for a while. And then we had a longer sit down at the Sloan Analytics Conference. They said, let's start figuring something out, how we could work together. And they had already had Prime Vision with Next Gen Stats as a product that they were putting together. Alex Strand, who'd been at Amazon, who still is at Amazon for a long time, he's the coordinating producer on Prime Vision. He runs all of our alternate streams. And so he was instrumental in making sure that they were doing something that was analytics focused. And then I brought that added extra layer of an analytics experience, as well as football playing experience to the show. So it's been something cooking for a long time. And I think the thing I love about it the most is it evolves. It's not the same year. The first year we had the L bar with stats. Last year I started talking more throughout the game. This year we have the high sky view, which I think has been fantastic. Way to watch the game. And really gotten a lot of buzz from people to be able to see the game from that perspective. So it's been fun watching it evolve since early conversations when putting it together.
What are some of the, I guess, new innovations that you've brought in this season that maybe the average fan has not noticed yet? And what are some stuff that you want to address eventually going into next year? Because I'm sure you have some more things up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of seen defensive alerts. That was from our show, made it into the main broadcast last year. We're really proud of that. Identify blitzes, pretty simple. How do we make a center? Everyone be a center now, because that's what I was doing as a player. I think what's really cool about this year is last week we really launched in earnest defensive vulnerability, which is when we're inside scoring position, what are the weak spots of the defense, and being able to identify that and why you watch the game a little bit differently. I think everyone knows how to watch and talk about the game from a matchup perspective, but with the rise of zone coverage, it's over 70%. Finding those soft spots in the zone, the places that people attack, I think that's been really, really cool to be able to do that. And we've had some really cool plays last week. Tim Patrick, there was a little route concept called Squire in the red zone, meaning an inside route that stop or go out, and then you run a dig over the top of it. And there was a PI call, but Tim Patrick was targeted right in the zone. I think it's really cool when we can show those. Hey, it's a new way to watch football. And what's really fun about utilizing AI is you like it best when it fits what a 12-year NFL vet. Because I do all these models, and before Andrew took a big job with Stanford, he would help me with a lot of these models of how to watch football from a quarterback's perspective. And when it's exposing new opportunities as well as fitting the normal view. So you want it to be able to reflect what an NFL vet would look at, but also, hey, what new things can we discover about the game of football that we might not have known if we're not for this technology? And I think defensive vulnerability does that.
We have here week 16 with the Broncos and Chargers, the big AFC West matchup coming here on Thursday Night Football. Again, if you want to watch Sam and all the amazing things that you have going on with Amazon, this is the alternate broadcast on Amazon. Very easy to find. Wherever you watch the main broadcast, there's an option right there to flip over to this one and see all the great stuff, a different vantage point, and everything that Sam brings to the game. I think I enjoy it. I know many friends in the media and teams as well who enjoy this. And I think fans who have not gotten into it yet will enjoy it as well. I want to ask you a big picture question here. What role do you think AI will play in the future of football, just in the next 5 years? Like, how big are we talking about over here?
I think extremely big. I think what a big thing with football is knowledge sharing, and I think being able to share knowledge and information with coaches. We all talk about the Shanahan coaching tree or whatever, but I think what happens a lot of times is like, you have your assistant coaches, and they're all supposed to be able to have their own routes and their own concepts. Hey, McDaniel does this differently than Kyle Shanahan, or Sean McVay versus Kyle Shanahan, similar tree, but who are you going to talk to on a regular basis? And I think having a model, there's people out there like AJ Smith, who's offensive coordinator in the XFL, who's worked on really cool projects to help identify where am I, how do I communicate better about figuring out my game plan? You can give AI from a GPT standpoint all this information about what your opponent's doing, what you're doing well, and it can help create a game plan with you and get you started. The best interacting with people and come up with new concepts, always going to be the best way to do it. But having a starting point, just to be able to have someone to communicate with, I think is very extremely valuable. On our side, it's that education. We are, I think, world class at being able to utilize AI to help teach the game in a different way, whether it's defensive alerts, defensive vulnerabilities, coverage ID. I've got Callie Baker. So I have NGS people in the room with me. They build our data packet. Keegan Abdu and Callie Baker in the room. And Callie Baker's calling out coverages before the coverage ID model because she's learning from the system. I think that's a really cool feature that comes from AI that can then, not have to sit in a meeting room for 11 years like I did to learn the game of football.
Yeah, I mean, there was sometimes the ability that you guys have to detect when a player is blitzing. I think there was one case earlier this year where this player in particular had blitzed maybe 3 or 4 times all year, and you guys had him circled. Like, I don't know how you guys do that, but it's truly impressive stuff. I want to give you a chance here for a second just to reflect. How proud does it make you to know that what you're doing right now and everything with Amazon and all the people behind the scenes is likely going to be just the future of football and how people watch it? Do you ever reflect on just how you guys are changing the game right now?
We have a lot of affirmations in our studio in Culver City. When I'm talking to you, what I'm looking at is my wife, Kelly, on one side, and then it says the best job around. When I'm writing my notes, I have a piece of tape that says they actually pay me to do this, and there's just all this information about, like, we watch, like, there's watching ball for a living. Like, we have all these different affirmations because we feel so fortunate, the whole team does, to get to work on this. And last week we launched safety point of view, be able to see the game from that side. Was it a perfect execution? No. But we were able to then try it, and now we can refine it. I think that's happened. High sky camera view, to be able to watch the game like you're playing Madden on a regular basis, I think it's been a game changer. Every week when I was meeting with Andrew, going over our different features, I showed him that, and I was trying to show him coverage ID, and he showed me, oh, this is the future. This is how you want to watch football. This is the best part. And so for me, I think being able to get that and refine that, and then, each week it's something different. I think that I feel extremely fortunate. I can't believe, I got lucky with the XFL, and I've gotten lucky with this. I feel like I'm the most fortunate guy in football to be able to get to do this.
It's really cool. And again, give this a couple more years. I think it's truly going to take off to a level that I don't think you would envisioned it possibly going there. And it's going to be fun to watch the rest of the average fans get involved as well, because I know it's coming here very soon. All right, I want to ask you a couple of general questions here because you've mentioned his name a couple times. I mentioned in the beginning. We had Zaire Franklin on the show. We've had Bobby Okereke on the show, two former Colts. And I asked him this question as well, but I feel like you might have a better answer. When Andrew Luck retired, was there any inkling that was happening? What was your reaction? What do you remember about that late August day in 2018, 2019, whenever that was?
Yeah, I remember him when he got hurt the year before, and being like, dude, you know, whatever you got to do to gut it out, I'm proud of you, but you never have to do this again. You don't have to play. And I think what was cool to see him is how much he gutted through that season, and I don't think
Yeah.
anybody really knew about it. I think for me, when he told me, I was nervous because I started thinking about, like, some of the financial implications of what he was doing. I think you probably know that better than anybody else, and I think when I was able to talk to him and realize how zen he was about it, because I'd known him, like, hardest working football, most gifted football player I'd ever been around. Before you had huddle iPads to watch film, you had to watch it in the office. And I remember him being there till 11, 12 o'clock at night, for no disrespect to San Jose State, but for San Jose State games. They beat Stanford this year, but they weren't beating us when he was playing. And so, like, he committed so much to this game and cared so much about it. And so the zen that he had with his decision, I felt that was nice. I think Coach Shaw, who's near and dear to me, what he said to me was like, I wish everyone got to see the same player we saw, you know? And I think that was the thing I wanted the NFL fan to see, is like, get to see that talent, that level of commitment. And it's nice to be able to see when that day comes up every year and people talk about it. It's been X amount of years since. It's only good things that people say, and I think that means a lot to me.
So obviously, Andrew, you mentioned it before. He announced this a couple of weeks ago. He is now going to be returning to Stanford as the GM of their football program. How do you expect him to do? And what were your thoughts when that became official?
Yeah, I think uh, Oliver had this quote at the XFL, was like, "We're looking for people with passion and intelligence, and the skills will come later." And he hasn't been a GM, he hasn't been a talent evaluator before, but his passion for Stanford football and his aptitude for anything he sets his mind to is unmatched. And so, I think everyone's kind of flying by the seat of their pants in college football right now, but I think his level of commitment and level of passion and who he is giving Stanford the best opportunity to be successful in modern college football, which, we had the odds stacked against us too in the 2009 through 2015 era too. But, at one point we had like the third most players in the NFL. We had the best, or I think like the fifth best winning percentage. Like, it's when you win at Stanford, and this is my plea to all your young listeners going, like, there is no better place to win. I talk about how lucky I am to have the job I have. Winning at Stanford is how I have this job. So be very aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Andrew do an interview with Dan Patrick a couple of weeks ago, and you just see the commitment that he has to doing this job that he's taken now, and how much he wants to see Stanford back on top. And he's very, very serious about it. He spoke about like the detail, the way he wanted to detail about everything. It was just so interesting to see, and I'm really excited to see him there. And the thing that really made me the happiest is seeing how happy he is, and that is really the most important thing, really, for me. One more thing here before I ask you the question I ask everybody. We mentioned Jim Harbaugh before. Obviously, he's now back in the NFL. We're going to see him here on Thursday night versus the Broncos. Do you have a good favorite Jim Harbaugh story?
Okay, so how many can I tell for NFL Spotlight? uh, I'll tell you my favorite. My favorite. It's an easy one. But training camps are really hard, and he had a quote one time afterwards. He said, "Football's it has to suck. I need it to suck, but this is Palo Alto, so we have to practice harder than everyone." And somebody said that this is hell. This can't be hell. We have Gatorade. There's no Gatorade in hell. Like, come on, guys. And like that to me, and we're all just after a 2-a-day, which the college football doesn't have anymore. And we're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's got it. He's funny. We just did a grinder of a practice, but but we have Gatorade, so it's okay.
There you go. I love Jim. Jim has won everywhere he's been, and it's cool to see what he's doing right now with this Chargers team. All right, Sam, I'm going to ask you the question I ask every guest here on the show. When we had Dean Blandino, he made sure to say you. I know my producer Ben could attest to this, but you were on our initial short list when this show actually got started back in July. But this is the NFL Spotlight Show. We love spotlighting people around the NFL who deserve more recognition, going through their journeys and everything. Player, coach, executive. Think of somebody outside the box, in the media, whatever you want. Who do you think should be in the seat here in the future?
Yeah, I have two. I think I watch the show, listen to the show. I enjoy it. I think on the first side, from a evaluation standpoint, Eric Galco, he has a lot of cool stories. From what I did on the football side, he was my personnel person. Shrine Bowl, we're very, very closely attached in a lot of things we do. He helps out with the models as well. Optimum Scouting does. And I think he's just such a good insider. The way he's able to then think creatively about personnel, I think people learn a lot from how he views the game of football. I'll give a little preview. When he was writing scouting reports, he wrote a scouting report so that you talked about what the player did, not your opinion on the player. And so that we could have, because we were writing scouting reports for all 8 coaches of the XFL. So if one coach liked one aspect and coach didn't like the other aspect, but they just got to see that player, they can see the player from reading the report because you're evaluating thousands of players at the XFL. I think that's important. And then his approach is very, very efficient. He'll say efficient a million times if he ever came on the podcast. And then another person is Betsy Riley. So she's my boss at Amazon. She was at NBC for many years, has done the Olympics, done almost anything you can think of, Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. And I think her approach and be able to think differently and ask why and push the envelope from a TV side, I think people are really interested about what why is TV involved so heavily in football? And I think being able to get her kind of thoughts and opinions on it would be super cool. And one more, Mike Band from Next Gen Stats. I think he is fascinating. I think he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I think you could get a lot from him on the show as well. He doesn't know I said that, but go Mike Band.
All right, I'm gonna look into all 3 of them. I'm sure they're all worthy. I actually know Eric as well. I've seen him, like this conversation started, got to see him at the combine these last couple of years, and he's doing a lot there at the Shrine Bowl. It's become it's one of the top college all-star games, and we're definitely going to be checking him out over here in next month once the college all-star game here gets underway in Dallas. All right, Sam, I want to thank you here for joining us here on the show, spotlighting your career, your path, your journey, everything you're doing right now. I could safely say we are all excited to see what else you have coming up over here with Amazon, all the new models and Prime Vision and Next Gen Stats. It is the future. I believe that. And everyone is definitely catching up over here on it as well. So thanks so much for coming on, and continued success.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Special thanks to Sam Schwartzstein for joining us here on the show this week. As you can see from that discussion, I mean, his knowledge is immense. And we obviously, if you watch this here on X, you got to see some still shots of everything that Prime Vision does and how great it is. But I'll say it like this. I encourage everyone here on Thursday Night Football this week, Broncos Chargers. It's going to be a great game, a lot of ramifications. You can watch the Thursday Night Football regular broadcast with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, but go use the alternate broadcast with Prime Vision. You'll still have Al, you'll still have Kirk, but you'll also hear Sam's voice coming in and out, and you're going to get a different vantage point of the game with different overhead shots, and you're going to get to see a different viewpoint of the game from the defense and who's blitzing. And it really tells you sometimes what's going to happen before the play even happens. That is how intelligent Sam is. And I'm telling you, this thing is only going to blow up here as the years go by. I truly believe it is the future of football. And Sam is a big, big reason for that. His story is really cool. And thank you to him for joining us here on the show this week.